Universal Pro Tool for flat wire spring assemblies. That's what this video is about. What it does, how to use it. It's designed for the 1911s using a flat wire spring assembly. Flat wire is just this. It's got flat coils instead of round. Major difference between these two is not so much the outside diameter as it is the inside diameter. Inside diameter of a flat wire is typically around 1/4 inch, whereas this is more around, around or even larger than 5/16. This is a Dan Wesson ECO. Main thing in determining whether or not this tool is a possible fit for your handgun, for your 1911, first of all, that it's got a flat wire spring assembly in it, but that it has a full-length guide rod. Now, full-length guide rod is basically defined by the fact that as the coils collapse, the guide rod is capturing them the full length of the spring, because typically this is under compression and is further down, whereas opposed to like a standard guide rod typically found, and even though this is a flat wire, it's not a full-length guide rod. So that tool is only going to work on a full-length guide rod. You can't use it on this type of guide rod standard. Okay, but if this is up flush, if you see the guide rods up flush or real close to flush with the front of the pistol, with the slide forward, then it's probably going to work fine. What would be the issue is that it has enough clearance. I've designed this tool around basically the 9mm, and it's kind of because it's in between. The iffy one would be 40 caliber. The reason why is a 40 caliber round is shorter, so it actually requires less stroke coming back. The tool comes with this gauge, and as long as your 40 cal has a full-length guide rod, you can see on this, which is 9mm, has all kinds of room up here in the front. The main requisite for this tool is that it's got enough room to go on there without potentially locking up prematurely. That just means it has to be flush with the front of this gauge or protruding out. 40 caliber round is 125 thousandths or 1/8 of an inch shorter, which means it'd be back about right here, which is just fine. So this tool is good regardless of caliber. Pretty much across the board, everything from the 40 cal shorter round all the way up to 357 Magnum, which is quite a bit longer. So it should be a good fit regardless. But this is where we get into that issue of possibly that the tool is too long for the guide rod. This is a Kimber Pro stainless, but it's been fitted with the Wilson Combat 651 flat wire kit. If I put this gauge on here and put it down, you'll notice it's almost flush. And that's because this is actually a shorter guide rod than full length typically is, which would be more like out here. And so that's why I include the gauge. If you've never field stripped it, haven't tested it before, use the gauge first. And I'll show you the problem that it could create if you put it on too short a guide rod. This is the older version of that tool. This is just a piece of plastic, Delrin. It's been turned down to the size of the guide rod, but short. It doesn't go all the way up. There's no clearance. Once the tool was put down against it tight, it ain't coming off. So the locking ring would have to either be cut loose or something done to the guide rod to get that tool off of there. So we never want to use this tool on too short a guide rod. But beyond that, the flexibility of this tool should cover virtually every flat wire spring assembly that's being used in 1911s to date, with that one exception of it maybe being too short of a guide rod. Manufacturers are good about coming up with their own recoil systems and how they want to implement them, and but just because they use a flat wire doesn't necessarily mean that they're implementing something that tool could be used on. But out of 99% of all 1911s being produced that I know of anyway, that should never be an issue. But this is the safety to ensure that there is enough space. Now, the flexibility of this tool is limited. Now we're going to look at this. This is the Kimber Micro. And the Kimber Micro basically is not a true 1911. It may look a lot like a 1911, but it isn't. It does use a flat wire guide rod assembly, but it's way undersized. It's been downsized to the point that if you attempted to put this tool on this guide rod, it's not going to fit. What would happen is it just simply spit the tool off. And this is where the the manufacturer decides what works for them. One of the changes in this tool was to increase the smaller diameter guide ability for it to lock onto a smaller diameter guide rod. This is actually a guide rod and spring assembly, flat wire spring assembly from Ed Brown's EVO KC9. Its typical diameter of a guide rod for a flat wire is 250 thousandths. The EVO, Ed Brown's EVO, is 235 thousandths. This tool has a lockup from 255 thousandths down to 225 thousandths. So it has that 10 thousandths extra in it for lockup. So it's more than capable of dealing with a smaller diameter guide rod as long as it doesn't go under 225 thousandths. Okay, so this tool, this is a Springfield EMP4. Same guide rod, the spring assembly, recoil assembly is in the operator's any 4-inch platform model in Springfield from the 1911s. And basically, all it's done is you just extend the tool completely out, place it on the guide rod till it goes down. There's a magnet in the front. It just kind of holds the tool in place. Release the slide. That's it. The next step would be, of course, to move the slide stop notch, the takedown notch down to the slide stop, and then remove the slide stop pin. Then remove your slide. Move the barrel back, link back, remove your guide rod and spring assembly. Then, of course, remove your barrel. And if you want the tool off of the guide rod, the simplest way is to insert it through the front as opposed to the rear. Push down and just pull the tool off. When you're going back together, you kind of do the same thing. Now, I'm trying very hard to keep the light on where you can see, because for some reason the videos seem to have come out. You either got too much glare or not enough light. Drives me nuts. Anyway, going back together, reinsert the barrel all the way back into its lugs, pull the link back, insert your guide rod and spring assembly. Now, this handle is designed in such a way that when it's folded back or where it's at, or even sideways, it doesn't really interfere with putting it in and out on most handguns. So the orientation is not real critical. And that wire handle can also be removed if it's just not desired at all. And in a lot of cases, it may not be. Anyway, you move your link down, pull the guide rod and spring assembly all the way through to the apron. Put a little bit of thumb pressure on that apron or on that spring assembly to keep the barrel up in its lugs. Make sure that the eyelet for the link is visible. Slip everything together, come back. As soon as you see the hole, and I don't know if you can through this lighting, but as soon as that hole in the link appears, it's a good time to drop your slide stop in. Take it on back. Put the takedown notch over the window and reinsert your slide stop. And then this ring is heavy enough that when it put up in an orientation like this, it'll fall down. It completely unlocks itself. It's real loose. So once it's unlocked, it just pulls right off. Now, I mainly included the handle for people with large fingers and for the next thing I'm going to show you, because I actually built this with the kind of future in mind and trying to accommodate as many 1911 designs as possible. This is not actually a 1911. This is STI's 2011, which is a double stack 1911. Internally, everything is 1911. The difference is how they accommodated the double stack magazine, and it also has a full rail on it for accessories, which goes all the way to the front. It leaves very little clearance up here for anything. It's all flush. Now, in this scenario, 5-inch, this is the first 5-inch I've actually successfully made that uses a single spring recoil system. This is a flat wire, but it's not actually for a bull barrel. This flat wire spring or guide rod is actually for a 5-inch government model. It doesn't have a reverse plug. I'm just using this as for design. So I don't even call this practical, but this is what in the future I hope to see, where they actually make for the bull barrel the flat wire spring assemblies. And I wanted this tool to be able to work with it in the worst case scenarios, which is actually having that all the way forward because you can't get to it. That's where the handle also comes in real handy. Gives you that extra length. Now, this tool is not long enough for a 5-inch. So it would require a spacer. And actually, it's not a bad idea to put the gauge on there, put the spacer on there, and see for sure that there is enough room, guide rod holding forward, to accommodate the tool without it locking up prematurely and getting stuck. But in order for a 5-inch to come apart, the spring plug has to be held back further. And you'll notice it still has room in there. And I will sell that bushing separate, and it will probably be brass, not plastic. Anyway, in order for a 5-inch, because the apron is so long and the spring plug for it is so long, that until it comes out of the apron, till the spring plug disengages from the apron, there's not enough room to get the angle for this to come up. In other words, see like that? If it was too far back in there, it would never clear this link. So this tool is actually designed to allow enough clearance on the 5-inch for it to be able to disassemble and reassemble. I got it off to the side here. Okay. with a round wire, the guide rod is so much larger in diameter that I have never successfully been able to make a tool that had enough clearance to be able to work on a 5-inch. And the normal guide rod that comes with that is actually a dual spring. They call it their Recoil Master. It's a dual spring recoil system. Now, the other end of the spectrum is 3-inch, and there are now kits coming out, flat wire kits, to replace. This is the Kimber Ultra, which typically takes a dual spring recoil system, so it requires a completely different solution. But they're coming out with flat wire spring assemblies for a lot of 3-inch pistols. They're not exactly a perfect fit. They're designed to be trimmed, if need be, by a gunsmith if you want it flush, but so they make it a little bit longer than needed. But same thing. Put the gauge on. If you've never tried it before, you'll notice it has plenty of guide rod out in front. It's fine. Put your tool on. And this guide rod and spring assembly is actually also designed for the Kimber, or not the Kimber, but the Colt Defender and New Agent models. EGW also makes one for Kimber that's a full length. Unlike the Wilson Combat 651, it goes all the way up flush. Let me get that over the window. So that's where I've redesigned this tool to be as versatile as possible. It's basically designed to fill the spectrum of everything. I can't make a custom fit tool, and I consider a custom fit tool one, like for instance what we have for the Kimber Pro, which is this tool, which is designed so that on the Kimber it aligns the takedown notch. Here, we'll just put it on there. It's the same type of tool, but the Kimber from the factory comes with, Kimber Pro comes with a round wire. And I've been making this tool since 2012, December 2012, or a version of this tool. See how it automatically stops over the window? And that's a nice feature, but it's limited to this. There's a few other handguns this could be used on, but it's very limited. And it's mainly designed specifically custom fit tool for the Kimber Pro and compact platform, the 4-inch. So I hope that was informative. I think I kind of covered everything. Obviously, big difference is diameter of guide rods. It takes a lot larger hole to put a tool over. And so it's really no different when it comes to the one for the flat wire. The difference is I've extended the capabilities and reach of this tool so that it fits far more 1911s with flat wire recoil systems.